Hey there, Team Whoopers. Coach John Ferry coming at you here for the Summer Run Challenge Athlete Briefing number 1. The Team Whoopers is down here in Lehigh Valley this weekend for the Hincapie Gran Fondo. So I'm trading in my run shoes for cycling cleats here for a couple days. It's coming at you outside of the home base office. So, main goal of this summer challenge this time around is to improve the result of our 20-minute distance test over an 8-week period of time. So the challenge is designed for athletes of all ability levels, especially with some of the new features of the adjustable difficulty level, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So the ways we're planning to work on and improve that 20-minute distance test this time around is by putting a focus on a little bit of VO2 max work, threshold work, and endurance work, which is going to be some of our easy pace, longer endurance activities. So those are going to be our 3 target energy zones, which are going to be a little bit different than the last 2 challenges we've done. We'll talk a little bit about VO2 max and what that is as an energy zone. So this is a pace you can run for probably about a maximum of 11 minutes. This is going to be over your aerobic capacity, working really huffing and puffing pretty good. On a scale of 1 to 7, on an RPE scale, it's going to be a 5 out of 7. Working on threshold, this is going to be something that's going to be a little bit more comfortable. Sometimes you'll hear this defined as a pace that you can hold for an hour at maximum. I'm going to throw a little bit of a caveat in there that this is a pace you can hold for an hour at maximum if you're incredibly well trained. So don't feel frustrated if it feels like a pace that's challenging, a pace that you feel quite confident that you could not hold for an hour. That's okay. That's an ambitious pace target that you're working for over the course of time, is a pace that you can hold for an hour when you're incredibly well trained. So that's threshold. Might be referred to sometimes as comfortably uncomfortable as well, a pace that you know you can maintain but just don't want to. That's going to be on an RPE scale of 1 to 7 with zone 4. And finally is our endurance energy zone. It's going to be our zone 2 training. That's a big buzzword now. Everybody's talking about zone 2, zone 2. We want easy efforts, nice and light. This is the bread and butter of every single run training plan. So we're going to be working on endurance running to go along with that VO2 max work and threshold work. The secondary goal of this training, so if you're a part of our spring or even our winter training, we were working a lot on VO2 max and anaerobic capacity. And we were doing those 2 things. What we were really getting ready to do was come into this springtime season where the races turn to shorter, faster distances. You stop seeing the half marathons right about now across the country. You start seeing 5Ks, 5 milers. And as we come a little bit deeper into the summer and it gets hotter and hotter, you're going to start to see those 10Ks, etc. So as always, you're trying to train in advance of the season. You don't come into the season and start training for the races that are happening right now. So in this particular challenge, we're evolving just a little bit away from the anaerobic capacity work, because we've done that over the last 2 challenges. And we're going to continue working on the VO2 max, and we're going to add in this threshold work. And the threshold work is going to move us towards the kind of the middle distance work. It's going to be pushing towards the 5-mile races, the 10K races. It's also an incredibly relevant energy zone for races as long as the marathon and half marathon. So we're doing the prep work now. This is kind of the early season prep work for fall endurance racers, as well as those middle distance races towards the end of the summer. That's our secondary goal, other than always keeping track that we're trying to improve that 20-minute distance test right now. So housekeeping, there are quite a few changes since last time around. So as always, the website will have your paces. So after that 20-minute distance test, which we'll talk about here very soon, you need to go in and enter the result in distance to get your paces for the rest of the challenge. This is no longer in the profile and settings section. This is on the gearbox icon on the pace box. So click that little gearbox. You'll have the ability to enter the distance that you ran in 20 minutes. Once again, we'll talk about that in a minute, but that is going to be very, very important over the scope of the 8 weeks to go ahead and get those paces right at the top. Your online portal will also include the workouts for each week. So please note that the emails that have been historically coming out that contains the workouts are going to be discontinuing. We're not doing that because we're mean or lazy. We're doing that because there are some complications as we've added a lot more options, a lot more plans to the platform. This gives us the ability to adjust a little bit more nimbly and make sure that things are updated for everyone in advance of receiving them on the portal. So the emails will go away. There will be emails that start to come out that remind you on Thursdays and or Fridays. We are a Friday schedule group, so on Fridays to go into that portal, check the schedule for the week ahead. Just know the schedule coming to the email has been discontinued. You didn't miss it, but you should be getting the reminder emails hopefully starting soon this week, and if not this week, then definitely next week. And as always, make sure one of the biggest reasons we want you going onto that portal, not relying on the email, is we want you going in to check the box saying that you did the workout, get credit for doing that workout. As always, chasing a 100% completion percentage is one of the greatest ways to ensure success over the scope of this challenge. So that I talked about our primary goal, our secondary goal. That 100% is an amazing goal to start right now and carry over the scope of the next 8 weeks. So let's talk very briefly about the strength work. So the strength work, FYI, if you've added this onto the challenge, outstanding. If not, also outstanding. Strength, we're still working to clean up some of those links in there. So the structure, I know is visible, should have access to, I think, everything except a single warm-up exercise at the moment. Hopefully that all gets cleaned up by the end of the weekend. Some links are internal, some are external. Once again, I think almost everything is there by the end of today. Everything will definitely be there. Just know we're working over the scope of the weekend, try to get that cleaned up nice and ready for starting next week. Also, Ryan Hopkins and I'll be doing a little interview with Ryan Hopkins, our head strength trainer. On Monday, we'll be releasing that, talking about the upcoming 4-week block. So the strength training, much like our run training, will work in 4-week blocks. We have 3 weeks up, 1 week of a bit of a regression or our unload week, and then we'll go into a new cycle. So there's a little bit of homework involved in this, getting in, checking out video links, learning new moves. This is part of the education process that's going to come with this strength work and these challenges. But just know that information that you learn, you'll be able to use over the course of 4 weeks. You're not going to have to learn and relearn and relearn and relearn. You get to learn and then get better and then get better and create a mastery over the course of a few weeks. So that's what's coming down the pike on strength. Look out for that video that we will release end of day on Monday. Now to the week 1 workouts. So first workout of the week, 20-minute distance test. So this is as far as you can run in 20 minutes. So this is, and let me make sure this is very clear, a maximum effort. So now a lot of questions always come up about, is this a progression run? Do I start easy, move to a certain pace? This is a maximum effort. So you want to really make sure you get good and warmed up and give it a good hard effort. This is going to dictate and determine that pace zone that you have for the next 8 weeks. So it's very important to give it a great try. So it's an intro baseline test, however, so you can't do badly. I know there's a lot of stress sometimes that comes with these tests. There's a lot of anxiety, but this is a baseline test. So this is testing where we are right now, and then we're going to train for 8 weeks, and then we're going to see where we are right then. So if you've been coming off time off, that's okay. If your results pull back, that's okay. That happens all the time in between seasons, especially after time off. You don't want to come back in where you left off. You want to come back in to where you are right now. This test can be done indoors, outdoors, on a treadmill, on a track, on a flat stretch of road. Wouldn't recommend it on a super hilly terrain, just me personally. But as long as you replicate the conditions between test 1 and the test in week 1 and the test in week 8, it's okay. What you really want to do is be able to compare your results from week 1 to week 8. So you want to simulate and copy those conditions as best as possible over the 2 tests, but just know it can be done in each scenario. So I am going to bring in a guest star here to talk a little bit. Thought it was well equipped to talk about why performance testing. I've done this a bit. Many people have heard why I talk about performance testing. So all right, I'm bringing my guest star here to talk about why performance testing.
All right, scoot over, John. Scoot over, John.
We got to get into one frame here.
What's up, everybody?
All right, so Matt,
we're getting ready for our bike ride tomorrow. It's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, we got to lean in. We'll do a little bit of a couples cuddle. So I thought this was a pretty good guy to talk about why performance testing. He's certainly known for bringing some tests to people out there. So, Matt, as you know, at the beginning and end of all these challenges, 20-minute distance tests, So why performance testing? You can't use my notes.
Oh man, come on. Cheat sheets right in front of me. Oh man. Performance testing, it's good. Again, good to have a baseline and a good way to customize your training so that you're training at intensities that make sense for you, right? But also it gives us some accountability, right? Going into your training, having some accountability, saying, here's where we are now and here's where I want to be in the future, and helps you really just customize the training to you. It's nice to have a baseline too. And I was actually just having with my dad about this, was that, focusing on performance is fun, right? So say you're not training for any of these races, you're just training for health benefits, right? Well, again, one thing we can look at is just looking at the scale, right? But another thing we can do is make our training more fun and make it performance-based, because I guarantee that if you improve your 20-minute test on anything over the course of this training program, you're going to, all those health benefits are gonna go along with your performance improvement, but your performance improvement is going to be a leading indicator of all those other things that you want to see. So I love doing these tests for cycling, for running, for everything, just because, number one, it's a good way of grounding yourself in performance and getting a baseline for where you're at. Another reason is customizing your training. And last but not least, it's a fun way to train and get a lot of the benefits that we're all looking for.
Yeah, for sure. So the next thing I always talk about with this test, I know you're a person who practices what you preach, is just preparing for the test.
Yeah.
So, big deal in the 20-minute distance test. People are doing all sorts of events right now. They're racing on weekends. They're busy with, certain things. So similar to racing, I think I asked Carly this in the last challenge when she was around. So, both kind of racing, but in these tests, like, any tips on how you prepare to make sure to set yourself up for success?
I look at these tests as anytime I'm doing a test, it's like a hard workout, right? We've talked about this before. It's just like a hard workout. And so, like any hard workout, and this is again why we think about performance is so helpful, is because when you're getting ready for a hard workout, what are you thinking about? You're thinking about your sleep, you're thinking about your nutrition, like what you're eating, when you're eating, you're thinking about your hydration. All those things need to be together and organized so that you're going to perform well in your test or on a hard workout, right? And that's another thing that fitness helps us do. It helps us get all those things in alignment. Otherwise, we're not going to perform well.
Yep.
So think about your sleeping, nutrition, hydration, all that stuff. And think about it as like a hard workout. No paralysis by analysis. That's how I like to approach these tests.
Oh, well, you took my note. Don't overthink it. Just go running. No holding back, though. No holding back. So we'll talk about pacing in just a minute here. They're always, if you tested within the last 2 weeks. So obviously, if you're coming off of our spring challenge, you tested, you feel really good about your test. Probably don't need to test 2 weeks later. It's a little bit of overkill. If you didn't feel good about your test, you felt like maybe it didn't go great, this is a great opportunity to test later. Nice thing with a 20-minute distance test, unlike a half marathon, a marathon, etc., you can do it pretty often if you wanted to. I mean, you're not going to see huge performance gains, but everybody has bad days. I know I've had a zillion of them. Matt's definitely had plenty.
Oh, yeah.
So getting a redo 2 weeks later is not the worst thing in the world either. But if you went out, crushed your last 20-minute distance test, feel free to use that, and you're going to do a 30-minute progression run. Know a guy that does a lot of progression runs, so you can certainly look into this guy here for a 30-minute progression run. But ultimately, the goal of that progression run is just to go a little bit faster over the course of the whole run. So sometimes we get really particular about the progression run in the challenge, and this week in particular, we're not doing that. It is kind of up to you. Start at a pace that feels nice, easy, and comfortable, and progress a little bit over the scope of 30 minutes. This is just an opportunity to check in with your paces, reacclimate. Maybe you've had a couple weeks off since the end of the spring challenge. So it's just that opportunity to kind of just touch those paces one more time before we jump into the bulk of training upcoming. So speaking of training upcoming, our second key run of the week, post 20-minute distance test or progression run, is our 30-minute VO2 max interval run. So Matt here is a VO2 max monster. So we start, and I like to throw in not an option that lunge matrix stretch. I want everyone to start doing it.
Those are great.
These things are great to move in 3 planes of motion before you come into the workout. So the harder the intensity of the workout, and this is a pretty hard one, zone 5 of 7 I mentioned before, want to make sure to really prepare your body. That's how you stave off those injuries, really get physically prepared to take on that work. So make sure to give that thing a check. It might feel a little silly at first. You're going to have to learn, once again, much like the strength training I was mentioning. Once you do it 4, 5, 6 times, you have it for life, and it's a great tool to have. So 15-minute warm-up inclusive of striders. Matt, I asked Carly this. I know your answer is going to be as well. When you're in college running track and doing these tough VO2 max workouts, how many times did you do striders in advance of your workouts?
Every single time.
Every single time.
And 6 to 8 at least.
6 to 8 striders. Okay, pretty good. So we're getting off light here. I think we're doing 5 striders over the workout. Feel free to add 6 to 8 if that helps. This is part of the warm-up. These are not intended as speed intervals. As a matter of fact, you could stop after you run these strider sessions and kind of re-catch your breath if you're losing a little bit before you go into the main part of the workout. The goal is to get your body, once again, more prepared to handle this high intensity speed that's coming very shortly after.
Yeah, I always think about, like, when I do a strider, I think about, okay, what's the main set going to be? How do I prepare my mind for that main set? Let's go through rehearsal mode. I call strider sometimes rehearsals. Going into rehearsal.
I like it.
Yeah.
Then our main set, we're going to do a combination of 30-second and 1-minute VO2 max intervals. So this, to be quite honest, is going to be a little bit of an introduction to VO2 max. So, Matt is I'm sure thinking right now 30 seconds and 1 minute, kind of short VO2 max intervals. So we want to touch on these intervals for the first time.
What's the recovery?
Recovery, equal parts.
Oh, so 30 on, 30 off?
30 on, 30 off, minute on, minute off.
No problem.
I think.
No problem.
We'll check again. Don't have a note on that. But so once again, introduction to VO2 max, things will clearly progress over the course of time. But this is want to reacclimate, want to start working in that energy zone, start to feel what that pace feels like, because we're going to quickly escalate it. And our final key run of the week, our long run. So this is one we want to feel easy. We want to make sure that you're feeling strong, both at beginning, middle, and end. This is, for me, always one of my favorite runs of the whole week. So I want to walk away feeling great at the end of this run.
I think our light just picked up.
Yeah.
1 second.
Our lights just went.
Oh, there it goes.
Power's back. Pennsylvania's wild. So
I'm going to start a fire here shortly.
So this is an opportunity to log miles, have fun. Great opportunity. I always like to plug, if you are an indoor only runner, but training for outdoor races, not only do I like you to take some of your pace workouts outside, but there's a great opportunity to get outside. The pace is much less important. You can, purely run on effort. You can relax it. You can hopefully start to feel comfortable running outside. You can start to get used to the weather conditions, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. So once again, great opportunity to try to get outside, hopefully enjoy a little fun in the sun. So a few questions that have come up for the Facebook group. The first one, very pressing, we're just talking about. So what should we take into account as many of us are transitioning to outside, running in warmer weather, more humidity? We'll ask the man from Georgia how to run in heat a little bit.
Oh, man. We used to run at 12 a.m. 12 a.m. runs, I recommend. No, obviously pick times of day that's cooler. You got to start transitioning your run times to earlier or to later, or whatever. Just get out of the main heat, the main times of day of heat. Also remember gradual. Our body's like gradual. Try not to do anything sudden. Sudden volume, sudden intensity. Back off the intensity, back off the volume, and then gradually build that up outdoors. Because it's going to take time to acclimate, period. And, remember hydration is all day activity. It's not just right before you run. It's not just right after. It's an all day activity. So staying on top of your hydration. Remember, hydration is more than just water. You think about electrolytes, think about noon. And what else is there? Sun protection, super important. Take care of your skin out there. Protect yourself from the sun. We just had a nice sunny ride today, actually.
We did.
And bring fluids with you. And of course, stay stay attuned to how you're feeling. If you're ever feeling dizzy or anything like that, heat is not something you mess with. Heat is not something you run through. It's something that you respect. And so if you start feeling anything, you just call it and bring it indoors.
For sure. And, maybe one thing Matt didn't mention, which rare, is that probably your best course of action in the heat is to slow your paces a little bit.
That's right.
So we talk a lot about pace. Obviously, we do.
AKA my marathon last year.
That's right.
Yeah, mile 11, my race pace went bye, and I had a choice of blowing up and not finishing, or having a fun run and slowing down. And so I wanted to finish and see everyone. So I slowed it down. So sometimes you guys gotta slow it down, and you can go, the heat adjustment chart, right?
Oh yeah. So I like, the best way you want to match effort, and you can kind of sabotage yourself by accident by trying to force yourself to a pace on a day where the conditions don't warrant it. So humidity is tough. I've never seen a great chart to adjust for humidity.
Oh man.
But there is a very Googleable chart called the Tinman.
Is that a word?
Maybe.
All right.
The Tinman Heat Index chart. And that is a pretty good guide to kind of tell you how you would even adjust your training paces in different weather conditions. Because if you're maintaining, especially the longer the interval, so we're working especially this week on pretty short intervals, other than the 20-minute distance test, which is a very long interval. And that might have a little bit of a negative pace adjust if then you're transitioning back to nicer weather. Most of us are looking at warm weather upcoming for quite some time. So it might be a great opportunity to test outside, especially if you run outside often, to kind of get a sense of what your paces are in the current conditions. So don't fear the heat. It does take about 3 weeks to totally acclimate. All the tips Matt said are great. Acclimate slowly, give your body time to adjust, be very thoughtful with nutrition. All those things are critical, but especially on your easy run and even some of your intervals, just relax the pace a little bit. That easy pace, I talk all the time of it's a huge range, but at the end of the day, we want it to feel easy and be easy as opposed to fall in that easy pace range. So just keep pulling it back down.
Remember what we always say about easy runs. I'd rather you reconnect. Got it. There we go. The other thing too, the other thing that I like about warmer weather is that warm-ups go better.
Oh, for sure.
Right? Your warm-up, my warm-ups are just I'm ready to go in no time. But you still need to go through your warm-ups. But hopefully your body's feeling better at the warm-ups. I know that warming up in the heat, I just love it compared to the cold weather, which I feel like the Tin Man out there creaking.
Oh yeah, undoubtedly. So the next question came out. This is a little bit of an administrative here. So I said, please tell us a little bit more about the difficulty setting for the summer challenge. And so, I want to take this and just say, we have been listening to your feedback.
I'll let you go.
See y'all. Listen. Thank you, guest contributor. Matt Wolpers, everybody. So let me talk about the difficulty challenge here. So we've been listening to your feedback, and we know that, especially in the start of this, we've got to make something that we can pick up people at every level. We want to make sure it's something that people who are coming in for the first time can participate in as well as very experienced athletes. So this just allows us a little bit more of an adjustability scale for some of the people who have, one, felt very intimidated by the level that they were coming in at, and two, some of the people that were putting up bigger weeks already and were ultimately hoping for more volume. So if I were to break it down over the scope of, really what I think we're looking at here, the more advanced setting is going to be probably a little bit more volume, a few more reps, but the volume piece of it is certainly here in the beginning going to be the biggest difference of just having a little bit more volume across the scope of the whole week. The slightly easier version is just going to have a little bit less volume, and it might even have just some reduced intensity in some of those most key workouts to make it a little bit more approachable. So the body of the workouts are all the same, because what we actually find very cool is that everyone gets to do the same workout together. So there are going to be some minor tweaks about how to make it a little bit harder and a little bit difficult, a little bit more difficult, a little bit harder or a little bit easier. But in essence, we're still all doing very, very, very similar workouts, which is what we have always aimed to do here. So hopefully you find that helpful, and please continue to give us feedback on that so that we can adjust it over the course of time. Oh, Matt escaped too early, but that's okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about the 20-minute distance test and how to pace it. So I know plenty of people have questions about pacing the 20-minute distance test and have fear of burnout in the 20-minute distance test. Oh, never mind. My key contributor's coming back to discuss the 20-minute distance test.
Let's do it.
All right, Matt, 20-minute distance
up?
Test. All right, fear of burnout. You're a man who knows a little bit about 20-minute tests.
Oh, yeah.
What are your best tips on how to pace the 20-minute distance test?
When you're getting started, again, I like the 4 quarters method when you get like your first time around. It's like start with something you know you could hold for an hour, and then build your way up. Build your way up in 5-minute increments. So four quarters. So I always think about, maybe like a game's like fourth quarter, you got to go crazy. You can lay it all out on the line, but you don't want to lay it all on the line the first 5 minutes, right? So you can build into it. But then the more comfortable you get with understanding where your fitness is at, what your goals are at. Like I always come into a 20-minute test, any 20-minute test with a goal of, okay, I think I can accomplish this. I think my fitness is there because I know my body pretty well. I've been training for a long time. And the more comfortable you get with your body, the better sort of targets you can set, right? So come in and think about, well, okay, let's start. What do you think you're capable of? And where do you think your fitness is relative to where you were in the past? And that'll help, give you some thoughts on what you can push for. And then of course I always try to beat that, right? So try to give me something I can go for. And so I guess the further I've gone with testing, for me personally, I now do the first half and second half. And in the course, the last like 2 or 3 minutes, I try to just crush it. But the first half is got to make it through. The second half, I start throwing it down. So again, 4 quarters if you're just getting started, and then the 2 halves is where I've moved to now. And don't come in blind. Come in thinking about what do you think you can achieve. Come in thinking about what your goals are. Where do you think your fitness is at? Those kinds of things. But if it's just your first time doing it, just do it, have fun, set that baseline, and remember that your improvement curve early on is going to be steep, so just get excited for that.
Couldn't agree more. And I like, for the people who've been around a little bit, we have systematically done this for a long time. So the tests are hard when you are unfamiliar with how to execute them. The first time you do a 20-minute distance test, the second time, third time, they're always a little bit hard, right? The effort is hard, but you learn how to do them and get better at them and get more proficient at the test itself. And hopefully you start to fear it a little bit less as well. So when you're coming into it, you feel more prepared, a little bit more ready to execute. And as Matt was saying, you start to change your tactics a little bit. You have comparable data to set yourself up for maybe a more advanced goal next time around. So for the people who've been doing it a while, a little extra pat on the back here. We're very excited for everybody who's starting now. It's always the right time to get started. So jump right in, as Matt said, have fun with it. And that is, going to be the benchmark workout of our week 1. So with that, we're going to bid everybody a fond adieu. Send you all off to crush.
I'm hungry now. Let's go.
To crush your week 1, and we will see you back here next Friday. Have an amazing week.